Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it is both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of giving you inspiration, specific takeaways, and so on, so your journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, before I fully dive into everything, I would love to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, the biggest sort of achievement of this past week is that I am done with the first draft of the animated script that I've been working on. Now, when I say done, it is a little bit misleading because as I texted my friends, I took a screenshot of the final pages, or the final page rather, and, down at the bottom where it says fade to black, the end, I took a picture of that and sent it to, several people that have been involved in the project. And I said, it's done. It's shitty and barely readable, but it's done. And that's quite literally the truth of it. It got me to a finish point, right? And throughout it, I was taking notes for my own internal purposes where, stuff that I want to clarify, expand, and so forth. But it just needed to give me a clear idea of where things stood, right? And that's the thing of any creative process is that, in your head, the idea is great, right? But it isn't until you start to put it on the page how you realize all the pitfalls of it, right? And the same thing goes for product development and so forth. You have to iterate that idea. You have to get it into a physical form or on the page, whatever the thing of it is, in order to be able to look at it and then assess it and make it better, right? And I could have, in some sense, I already done this once where, I got about halfway through and there were so many notes that I had earlier as I was writing the draft for myself that, I essentially chose, this was about a month or so ago, I chose to go back and essentially, do a page one, start from page one, incorporating these notes, like a full rewrite. Here, it wasn't so drastic, so, the notes that I left for myself, while it does alter things quite a bit, at least, with certain sections, I felt it was more beneficial to just literally get to the end and then, me and all the other collaborators, we can kind of assess it and be like, okay, where we're at and how do we elevate the ideas that are there and get rid of the ones that are bogging it down. And that's the mission, right? That's the goal of all of it. And I'm very happy with where I'm at with it. As far as this, right? I know the journey is nowhere near complete, but at least it is done, and it's a lot easier it's like the blank page syndrome, right? The blank page syndrome is a very scary thought because there's nothing on the page. And so that's daunting. But now that, I have 122 pages written, I can assess that and be like, ooh, okay, cut this, no, expand this, and so forth. And overall, I now have momentum and I have an indication of where I want to go as far as, the next revision and what needs to be revised. So that's very beneficial. And so I'm excited to do that. Now, I've been sort of, really pushing myself forward, and part of the whole reason why I definitely just was like, let me just get to the end, was because May 25th is the Austin Film Festival deadline for script submissions. And it had been my goal to use that as a motivator. And while it'd be great to be able to submit to the Austin Film Festival, which is a festival that I love, even if I just went hardcore for the next few days, all in, just revision, it's obviously every script is room for improvement, but I just don't think it'd be indicative nearly enough of like what the final result would be. And so, I don't think I'll end up submitting. I mean, unless a miracle happens, listen, never say never, that type of thing. But, it is my intent to continue using this momentum to make the necessary changes, but not berate myself for missing that deadline, right? Because there's going to be other script competitions down the line and so forth. I mean, really for me, it would have just been a fun excuse to attend the Austin Film Festival this way. Obviously the dream would be to be able to go with a movie and screen that, but all the same, I don't have a movie at this point to showcase. So, this was my other way around. And when I say, obviously I've made 2 feature films at this point and a bunch of short films, but it's like, certainly with the feature films, they've played out their film festival circuits, and, one you can, Love Market, you can watch on Amazon and Tubi. Bogota Trip is now in the distribution phase where we're figuring out, where that'll go and so forth. So, it wouldn't make sense to submit Bogota Trip or any one of those because those have had their day at the film festivals. And who knows, when the movie's done, maybe it'll play at the Austin Film Festival, or, my dream is always to go to Cannes, which is actually happening right now. So I'm a bit jealous of that, but, because I'm not there. But that to me, would be an amazing experience to, the Cannes Film Festival or the Austin Film Festival. Those are ones that, for me, I would just, definitely love. And, we'll see how it all plays out. But as far as the script competition itself, I don't think I'll be submitting this one. And, just to kind of take a step back of why I would even submit, as far as the Austin Film Festival, it's because it would just give me a great excuse to attend. But, part of the benefit of any screenwriting competition is to get some feedback, as well as just be able to talk about the project with, known players in the space and potentially draw interest towards that project and so forth, which would be great. I know I don't need a big budget to make the movie, even though it's animated, but that's the beauty of animation, is you can go wild with the concept. Your imagination is really the thing that prevents anything, right? You can, if I tried to do all the things that I'm writing about live action, who knows? It might be like a $300-400 million movie. Whereas with animation, animation can be costly, but not that level costly, right? So it allows me to do some wonderful things, and I just genuinely love the medium. I've talked about it in my past episodes of how much more I've been studying it, and I've loved it since I was a kid. Dating back to the Flintstones and the various Hanna-Barbera TV shows. Wacky Racer is one of my favorites, right? I just love the genre, and certainly as you grow older, you start to recognize that there's also it doesn't have to be cartoons for kids, although I do have nostalgia for those. You can get something as wonderful as Suzume, which is made for both kids and adults, right? That's the beautiful part about it. Same thing with Pixar. Pixar has that ability to transcend. So, that's where I'm at. I think more to come once, this week, I'm sure I'll connect with my various collaborators and get their feedback on stuff. Even recently, I spoke with John Comerford, and we were kind of talking about this concept, and he was asking questions. It's just great, right? Because getting that more direct interaction, because as I'm writing it by myself, I'm asking myself questions and stuff like that, but I'm not really pushing myself. Whereas it's good to have that friction from somebody else, and not because they're necessarily critiquing it in a bad way. It's just, part of the process to explore those ideas and have a through line. And the biggest thing, it all has to make sense. And one of the things that I even like made a note for myself was this idea of simplifying and coming up with an internal logic for the scope of, this fantasy element, right? And not that it didn't have a logic before, but I think I found a better way to simplify it for audiences, because there is a lot already in there. And I think it can be a little bit more succinct with the new direction that I'm planning to go in. So I think that's really going to be good. And talking with John already gets me excited in that direction. And the questions he asked also led to complications for several characters, because I was trying to give a few of the characters something more to do to have them be a little bit more active, and then this certainly fulfills that requirement. So it's been wonderful to utilize it. So yeah, creatively, that's kind of really it. In this next week, I'll be getting notes back on this draft, which I mentioned. I'll be getting a new batch of character designs from the animators, which I'm excited about. On the back burner, as far as my involvement, has been the filmmaking how-to book. So that one I've actually got a ghostwriter on, and he sent me a new batch of stuff to review. So this week, that's what I'm going to be doing. So excited for that. While I wait for people to read this version of the script, I'm going to try to just do a few chapters in the novel that I've been writing. And that way it'll give me some time off from, the script. So to the best of my ability, it can be a little bit fresher. And, that way I'm not addressing notes unnecessarily, which, might be irrelevant based on any conversations that I have with people on the feedback. So that's kind of the major stuff that I'm working on. And then I've recognizing that I do have a lot going on, I'm trying to get my friend Anthony involved on some editing that I've got for this short parody that I filmed, and have a base edit of, but it needs B-roll and other stuff. So it'd be great to get his help on that. And then there's also this sort of mini documentary, let's say, that I want to create, like a 10-minute video about something that's near and dear, and that doesn't have to come out till November, but I want to get the ball rolling on that. And so I'm like, hey, Tony, Tony's someone who I worked with in the past on multiple projects, and there's this one summer where, at my apartment, we literally had two giant desks, one for me, one for him, and he was editing stuff, I was editing stuff, then I'd review it, blah, 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 and we had a whole thing going. And so I was like, let's, we don't necessarily have to go back to that level, but, certainly I said, once or twice a month, if you come and knock out, just put in a full day, I'll pay you for that. And I think it'll certainly help me to move the ball forward on some of these projects that have been kind of sitting there and collecting dust. So I'm excited, And speaking of finances and whatnot, the sort of beautiful thing for me, I talked about in the past being involved with the Financially Fit Foundation, which is a nonprofit geared towards teaching people how to manage their finances, essentially, right, and be financially literate. And it's one of those things, the more that I lean into it and do with the foundation, obviously the more I benefit, right? And I've been, what allows me to, do all this various stuff and, have a ghostwriter, be able to talk to Tony and have somebody to offload work and so forth is because of the management. And not that I was, terrible before, but now it's just even better, right? You just, like with anything, it's elevated and you grow. And so one of the big things is, just even like now how I look at it in terms of timing, right? Like I've got some, for me, my credit card statement is about to close out. And so I'm like, you know what? Let me hold off on certain purchases so that way I can save it, until that statement comes out. Because then I won't be paying the stuff off in June. I can, pay it off in July when, other payments come in that I'm owed and stuff like that, right? So it's basically being able to time out payments with when invoices are coming and so forth, right? And this is the benefit. I can just identify this stuff like a lot easier, whereas before I wouldn't have thought about it and would have just made a purchase, and then all of a sudden, I've got this big credit card bill due, which, would have thrown it off. It just becomes easier, once you start thinking about it in this way. Now, how is that necessarily beneficial to you? Well, if you'd like, definitely check out the Financially Fit Foundation website. But most importantly, as far as that's concerned, there is a book called Save Yourself. It's linked there. You can find it on Amazon, Save Yourself. And, that essentially teaches the Financially Fit Foundation system. So, you can purchase that book and learn yourself. As far as, just stuff that's kind of been going on and whatnot, this past week was kind of very Fast and the Furious heavy. My friend Khalil and I, we were excited to see Fast 10. And so, I was hanging out with him and I was like, it'd be fun to rewatch a movie or two before we see Fast 10. And so I was like, which one should we even watch? To me, the one that made sense was 5 because it's so tied into what Fast 10 is. But we ended up seeing the first Fast and the Furious, and it's just so crazy to rewatch that movie. And this isn't a spoiler thing or whatever, but it just that's the movie that launched one of the biggest franchises in the world, right? And it's just so weird to kind of consider that and so forth, right? I just love studying that, and even just a day or two ago, I also rewatched The Social Network and looking at that through a fresh pair of eyes, seeing in the context of today versus, all the years that it came out. I don't know, it's just kind of wild and interesting to think about. And, even seeing, as I was watching The Social Network, I'd look up, where's Sean Parker at today? Where's Eduardo? All the players essentially, how did they fare out? So I don't know, it's just interesting to kind of see it all play out in a certain way, right? And what's kind of cool in general too that I'm finding more of as I navigate things and through my continuation of just going to therapy and so forth, I'm a lot more at ease with how I handle things and so forth. And one thing, for example, is Tim Ferriss likes to say, the quality of your life is directly proportional to the amount of hard conversations you're willing to have. And I find myself more and more leaning in and addressing things that in the past I might have let go, and doing so not in a rude way, but saying what matters so that way it will be fixed, and not Kim Scott has this wonderful book called Radical Candor, right? Caring deeply, but also being direct, and having that ability to do that, and not avoiding it either. It's just for me, I'll note something, and then it's just hey, let's just have a quick conversation, addressing it, and not making a making a mountain out of a molehill sort of thing, but just, hey, before it becomes a mountain, let's just address it and move forward, right? So that's the wonderful thing. And, I mentioned the previous vlog that I recently rewatched, The Matrix, And, still to this day, I think about, like, there is no spoon, that line from that movie. And if you're unfamiliar, there's this part where Neo is talking with this young boy, and essentially, really, the point of it is, as the boy says, that it's not to bend the spoon, it's to realize there is no spoon. Because when you realize that, it essentially showcases to you that it's not the spoon that bends, it's you. And so, really what it comes down to is, in life, whenever we think we have a problem with the world, it's really just us, right? Like, more and more that I go through life and think I have issue with X, Y, and Z, I don't. It's really more myself. And if there is something that needs to be addressed, well, now I know, like, if it's a work procedure or protocol or something, right? Then sure, that's fine. It can be addressed, but I don't lay fault on anyone necessarily. And, I take the ownership of, as I said, just addressing it before it becomes a big issue, right? And it's tough to, like, indicate how all of this is sort of manifesting itself, but, like, as I said, I do feel lighter in general, and at ease with the things that I'm doing. And unfortunately, there's that great line in The Matrix, no one can be told what The Matrix is, you have to see it for yourself. And it kind of is that way, right? Like, I'm sure, you've seen photos of whatever place, right? Let's pick South Africa or something like that. And chances are, I'm just going to presume that you've never been to South Africa. And sure, you might have seen pictures just like I have. I've never been to South Africa. And we might have an idea, but until we're there, we don't know, right? It's a whole different experience to actually be there for yourself. And so that's kind of what this feels like. I can describe it and show you pictures and so forth, but it's not the same as if actually experiencing it. That's why, I do call myself the 360 creative coach. That's why I'm talking about all this stuff. That's why, I even started, inserted finances into this, because to me, it's all part and parcel of it, right? If you can be financially stable, then you can create your art and not have to worry. And that allows you to be more creative, right? And all that. And if your mind's good, then your creativity will good. That allows your finances to be good. Like, these are all parts of the whole, right? As opposed to, trying to isolate it, because it's all interconnected. Certainly the pandemic has taught me how interdependent the world actually is. But another sort of truth that I learned recently is how seductive fear actually is, which is an interesting term when you think about it, seductive. I used to say, borrowing from Sebastian Horsley, misery is just as agreeable as happiness. And this is kind of an extension and furtherization of that, where fear is seductive, And I guess that's where, the temptation of the devil imagery comes from, is because it is alluring, right? There's that charm to it of, like, oh, okay. And so forth, right? And just even for myself, like, a lot of decisions in many, many years have been made just on the basis of fear. I didn't know it, but as Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious, until you bring forth and make the unconscious conscious, it will dictate your life and you will call it fate. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. Not be exact, but that, give or take, that's about it. And it's true, right? And that's essentially, as far as for me, what I'm doing is uncovering that, right? And even going back to the writing, right? At first, all the writing, the idea and so forth, it's more kind of like instinct and, kind of what comes and what you think is cool and blah, blah, blah. And as you put it to paper, you start to unearth that unconscious desire of, like, well, what am I trying to actually say? And then you start to look at it, okay, like, this is a jumbled mess. Well, let's untangle this. And, this, okay, it's cool in concept, but that's actually a different story. So let's save that for, another time, and let's focus on this and so forth, right? It's all interconnected. So anyway, thank you for taking time to tune in. I just wanted to kind of catch you up as far as what's been going on. But I truly do appreciate it. As always, feel free to ask any questions or topics you'd like me to cover. As always, you can comment down below or hit me up on social media. Likewise, if you appreciate what I do and think I might be of benefit more directly, well, then that's what my Patreon page is for. Patreon.com/PhilSvitek. There, you can sign up. There's just one tier. It's $10 a month. That way everyone gets all the same stuff. And yeah, we can interact that way. So thank you so much. I truly do appreciate you, and I hope to see you next time.